Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. Well, whether you realize it or not, the drug situation in our country is still a major concern. There is still situations that are escalating. There are substances out there that are appearing almost on a weekly basis that are stronger than the next. I just saw one last night watching the news, not even kidding. And it's impacting our youth and our schools. We're going to talk to a gentleman today, part of a company called Kress and Associates, that have been providing an educational program to schools in the Western Pennsylvania area, creating that awareness for younger people in that area. But you know what? We're going to take it steps higher today, as this podcast can be heard anywhere on the planet, and get that awareness out there and really demonstrate what we've got going on. And a lot of us are turning our heads to. Don't want to really admit that we still have a major drug problem in the U.S. Joseph Kress, he's our professional of the year. DrugAwarenessUSA.com is his website. He joins us today on the program. Joseph, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you here. I'm trying to think of that news story that I heard last night, and I can't think of the name of the drug, but what they were basically saying is like it's 100 times stronger than fentanyl.
Yeah, it is. There's xylazine, which creates tremendous effects on your body. It actually destroys your tissue. It literally eats your flesh, and the doctors, there's nothing they can do to stop it other than amputate your limbs. Xylazine is overwhelmingly powerful, and fentanyl is actually 100 times more powerful than heroin, and it's 100 times more powerful than morphine and 50 times more powerful than heroin.
Unbelievable. And this is nothing new. This is, these substances have been on the streets, if you will, for quite some time, many years.
Yeah.
And it's still a problem and just getting worse. Can you illustrate when we say worse? And a lot of people turn their cheek about it. How bad is the situation right now?
Well, in the 1960s, they declared the big war on drugs when Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and those individuals, those high-profile individuals, died of drug overdose. And Jim Morrison, and they actually started to do some things, and then in the 1970s, it continued to get a little bit more aggressive. But then you saw the deaths of Prince and Whitney Houston and so many of these big stars that were using drugs. And the problem hasn't gotten better. In fact, in 2023, almost 7,000 Americans died of murder. There were 41,000 fatal automobile accidents, and yet over 111,000 Americans died of drug overdose that 1 year.
Wow.
It's overwhelming. Yes.
Yeah. Even in our schools, right down to vaping. And I've spoken to, I'm in the New York suburb of New York, spoken to many administrators in schools, and many schools now have substance abuse staff as part of the staff, and that's new. That only started in the last year or two, but their take on it is pretty much every student is vaping. Pretty much every single one. What are they vaping? Well, it could be THC, it could be nicotine, or it could be whatever. They don't even know what they're vaping at times.
Right.
Are you hearing the same thing in Pennsylvania?
Well, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've been fighting this war on drugs for years because of a family tragedy. But what happened is recently I sent 50 letters to 50 superintendents of school districts in the Cleveland, Ohio area. And of those 50 letters that I sent out, I got one response, and it was no thank you.
Wow.
And, by the way, last year, Ohio was ranked only second in the nation in drug overdose deaths.
Unbelievable.
So I don't know what the problem is with them, but you got to look in the mirror and stand back and say, if we don't do something to help these kids understand the dangers of drug and alcohol addiction, when they're at the only time in their life when they have the opportunity to learn how dangerous drugs and alcohol is, we have lost them. Because I've interviewed hundreds of people who have been involved in drugs and alcohol addiction. And not one of them ever said to me that, oh, when I was younger, I never went out. I never did any drugs. I never did any alcohol. And then one day I decided, well, today I'm gonna buy a couple crack rocks and I'm gonna smoke some crack. It doesn't start that way. It starts with a beer. And Johnny in 6th grade says, hey, come on over to my house. My mom and dad are out for the evening, but my dad isn't going to be home. They're going to the airport, and he's flying out of town for work. And I got a 6-pack of his beer. He'll never miss it. And that's how it starts. It starts with the beer. And then after they get accustomed to having a little buzz on from drinking beer, all of a sudden somebody's going to pull out a joint. Hey, you want to try this? Or here's a couple pills. You want to try a pill? And now they're on a bus and they're not driving. And it always starts with a beer. Yeah. Every time. And the sad thing is, after they do this in 6th, 7th, 8th through 12th grade, then they start to drop some acid, or they'll maybe try some cocaine. They'll do a little bit of that, or they'll do some ecstasy. And all of a sudden, they become addicted to drugs, and they can't stop. The average person goes through a minimum of 5 drug addict programs to try and get off of drugs, and the success ratio is terrible.
Wow. We don't think of those things where it starts or can start with a beer. And one of my greater concerns, and I have teenagers, is, when a teen, and I have those conversations that we're talking about with my kids, they don't even know what they're getting half the time. No, they don't. Because last year in Philadelphia, because they have a district attorney, I'm going to say Larry Krasner is not the guy you'd want for your DA. And what he did is he doesn't prosecute most drug cases because he's this liberal district attorney that just turns his back on it. But what happens is they took every street drug that they seized over the summer and they had it tested. 90% of all the drugs that they had, whether they were pills, whether they were marijuana, whether they literally soaked marijuana in liquid fentanyl so that you can have the reaction of getting high off of fentanyl. And all of these drugs, cocaine, heroin, xylazine, you name it, they have fentanyl in it. And if you have 3 little granules of sugar in your hand and it's not sugar, it's fentanyl, you're dead. You're dead. Yeah. It doesn't make any difference how strong you think you are. 3 granules, the size of granules of sugar, will kill you if it's fentanyl. And the Mexican cartel is mixing fentanyl, and don't think for a moment they care whether they get 1, 2, or 3 fentanyl granules in your pill when they're making these pills with a pill stamp. And they're shipping them to the United States, and you can see on the internet or the news hundreds of thousands of pills in bags that are being shipped to our country. And a kid, if he gets a pill from his buddy, hey, I got this fentanyl, or I got this ecstasy pill, or I got this pill from my buddy, and next thing you know, it's not Oxycontin, it's not Dilaudid, it's not Vicodin, it's got fentanyl in it. Mm. You're dead. 1 pill. Yeah.
And these kids don't know this. That's why I developed the drug and alcohol awareness program for middle and high school children, so that they can learn.
The education has to be there. And by the way, and I want to get to your story in a moment, you mentioned district attorney. I'm going to share, and I'm kind of proud of it. The district attorney in our county, when he was having his inauguration a couple of years ago, his team asked me to be the master of ceremonies. Full disclosure.
Oh, wow.
Full disclosure,
Right.
I didn't even know who the man was. I never met him. They reached out to me. I guess my record is good. And the first thing I did was look into his history in terms of what he's done for drug enforcement and such. And I said, you know what? He aligns with what I believe in. I was the master of ceremonies. Very proud moment for me. And it was only a couple of months ago that he announced the indictment of 29 people following 3 separate drug trafficking investigations, and I just pulled it up online, and they seized more than 5 kilograms of cocaine, 750 grams of, I'm not even sure how to say it, XYLA.
Xylazine.
Thank you.
It's xylazine. 809
grams of fentanyl, 809, 301 grams of heroin xylazine mix, 2,300 fentanyl tablets, on and on and on and on and on. That's one of the good busts that are going on. With a large amount. We need to get back on this. I feel like it was maybe 5, 7, 8 years ago where there was a big focus on the drug situation, and then the foot came off the pedal. Joseph, what do you think happened? Are you feeling the same way?
Oh, I feel the same way. Absolutely. Our system is not working. And, for the families out there, the moms and dads who think, well, my son Johnny, he doesn't have to worry about doing drugs. We don't have a worry in the world about that stuff. He doesn't even drink. Well, I got news for Mom and Johnny's mom and dad. All you got to do is call your son on his way home from high school and say, hey, Johnny, we need a gallon of milk at the convenience store. Bring one home with you. Okay, Mom. He goes into the convenience store. He's back by the cooler getting a gallon of milk, and in walks a guy that's strung out on methamphetamine. He's going to rob the store, and guess what? He knows not to leave any witnesses behind. Now, his drug addiction has destroyed your life and your family's life, and it happens only every day. 80%. The FBI Bureau of Justice Statistics proves 80% of all crime is drug-related in one way or another.
Wow.
And unfortunately, people don't realize this, and they don't take it as something that's serious. And they have to demand, not ask, not, oh, would you please? No, they have to demand that a drug program similar to mine is installed. Now, I have to tell you, the DARE program was a horrific failure. It was a bunch of businessmen got together to put together a program to make billions of dollars, $30 billion, by the way. And what happened is, in 2002, Senator Dick Durbin received a letter from the Government Accounting Office stating that they found, after extensive studies, there was no significant difference between the students who had gone through DARE and those who didn't. And it was a failure before it started. But a program similar to mine is extremely effective. I have done programs throughout throughout Pennsylvania, and I'm telling you, when you have a classroom or an auditorium of 700 students, and for an hour and a half, it is drop-dead silent, and the only thing you hear is some kids crying because they're seeing their life or a family member or their best friend or their mom or dad, and they don't like what they see. My program is exceptionally powerful. If you go to my website, drugawarenessusa.com, and go to the bottom of the right-hand column, you'll see principals, school resource officers, teachers, counselors. One counselor said, in my 32 years of teaching, I've never witnessed a more powerful program. A school resource officer said, after Lieutenant Kress's program, a young lady came up to me and handed me 7 or 8 marijuana pipes and a bag of marijuana and said she's done with this. She doesn't want this anymore. There aren't programs around like mine that actually have a dramatic impact on changing the minds and the hearts of kids, because now they've learned how drugs and alcohol can destroy their life.
This hits home for you, especially because there was something drug-related that impacted your life. Can you share that with us, Joseph?
Yeah, my older brother, he was 25 at the time. I was 23. He got married on Valentine's Day in a candlelight ceremony at St. Peter's Cathedral here in Erie, Pennsylvania. And they, because of a weather situation, could not fly out to Hawaii. So they had to change their plans and took a car. They drove to Washington, went to Florida, and then they ended up in the Mardi Gras in New Orleans. They're sitting in a restaurant having dinner, and a couple got seated at the table next to them. Oh, are you here for the Mardi Gras? No, we're here because of the weather, and we got married on Valentine's Day. We're here on our honeymoon. Oh, waitress, get them a glass of wine on us. Well, my brother and sister-in-law socialized with this couple during dinner, and at the end of dinner, they got up and went down to the French Quarter and walked into a tavern. It's Mardi Gras. Everybody's partying. And a few minutes later, in walks this couple. Oh, Greg, Janet. And they socialized with this couple the rest of the evening, just drinking and talking. And at the end of the evening, the guy says, we'd like to make you a nice New Orleans-style breakfast at our place. And they talked about it, and they thought, geez, they've been nice. Yeah, we'll go there. Well, when they got there, the guy said, hey, Greg, I want to show you something in the other room. And the girl said, Janet, sit next to me here on the couch. Greg went in the room. The guy closed the door and pulled the gun on him. I want your money, your credit cards, and your jewelry. Then he shot my brother in the face 6 times and stabbed him 17 times. And when the woman heard the gun go off, she pulled out of her purse a rusty hook carpet knife and slit my sister-in-law's throat and smashed her face with the brick.
Oh.
They were arrested a few minutes later because they had drugged Janet's body out to the street and went back in to get my brother's body. And Janet, by the grace of God, was not dead. She was unconscious. Got up and ran. And the young guy called the police and an ambulance, and they saved her life. And the police followed this heavy trail of blood right back to this apartment and arrested these two. So this has impacted my life more than you could ever possibly imagine. And that's why I became a police officer.
My gosh. I have chills, Joseph. I just can't even imagine. And this was then where the drug situation isn't what it is today.
Oh no, it wasn't even on the radar compared to the way it is today. Now it's overwhelming. And I find it humorous because whenever I have an auditorium filled with students, I'll say, how many people here know somebody who either uses or sells drugs? Every hand of every student goes up, and every teacher's jaw drops open. They stand there just with their mouth hanging open like, oh, my God.
It's wake up, people. Seriously. And the other part is, in my area, you always hear about this one school district, and people say, no, there's no drug problem. And it's in a more affluent area. No, there's no drug problems over there. You don't have to worry. No, you know what that means? It means they're doing pricier drugs, more elevated, because they can afford it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have the money to buy it, and just because mom and dad don't see the difference, they don't see what's going on with their child until it's too late, until they become addicted. And we have to get these messages to our kids so they learn what's going on about it before it becomes a problem of addiction. Yeah.
And to your point, it's already going on. They're all vaping. It is what it is, whether they're in possession. And when I say all, I'm going to say most schools, call it middle, high school. I'm going to say probably 80% of them are vaping. Now, does that mean that they're holding a vape and they have one? Not necessarily. They could be walking through the hallway. Hey, can you give me a hit? And
exactly.
Most of your legal career involved narcotics, didn't it?
That's correct. I was the head of narcotics for 10 years. I was actually deputized FBI, Immigration and Custom Enforcement, DEA, ATF, and Secret Service. I was shot during the service of a drug search warrant. A guy shot me through a closed door and hit me in the thigh, and it missed my femoral artery by less than an inch.
Wow. From your own personal experience to your work on the job, you've seen a lot, Joseph. You really, really have. Now I can truly understand why, you're on this platform to get the word out there. And that's coming from a parent. I don't even know the other side. I just know what I know. So much going out there. Tell us about your book. You have a great book. It's called Single-Handed. What's that book about?
I wrote Single-Handed as a tribute to my older brother. There was nothing that I could do for my brother during the time that after he was murdered and during his trial. I couldn't speak in his behalf. There was nothing that I could do. But when I retired from the police department, I decided that I wanted to write a book as a tribute to him and tell his story of what happened. And my brother was probably one of the softest-hearted people you ever wanted to meet in your life. It's just that he did not recognize that these two people that were literally stalking him, that he didn't realize that they were drug users. And it cost him his life. And he got to be married 10 days. The ironic part of those 10 days, my sister-in-law lived as a recluse for years after she recovered. And she eventually had a daughter after she remarried. And her daughter was born on Valentine's Day.
Wow.
The day my brother and Janet were married. And I know people will find this hard to believe, but when I got engaged, I told my wife-to-be, I won't barter on this. I'm naming my firstborn son Greg after my brother. She had no problem with that. We got married, and 3 years later, we had our first child. It was a boy, and we named him Greg after my brother, and he was born on Valentine's Day.
Unbelievable.
And
That's just there are Joseph. There are no coincidences in this world.
No. That's the odds of that happening are just astronomical.
Yeah.
So, but I had a great career as a police officer, as a lieutenant. I was a sniper on the SWAT team. So I wrote the book Single-Handed to tell the story of what happened with my brother and how it moved me into a career in law enforcement. And I had a great career. I mean, I earned 31 letters of commendation, a proclamation for heroism, the Medal of Valor, the Purple Heart. Got the part about getting shot, got that taken care of. And I had a wonderful career. But unfortunately, toward the end of my career as a police officer, I started doing these drug and alcohol awareness presentations for middle and high school kids. It always starts in 6th grade when your little one decides, I'm gonna sneak one of my dad's beers.
Yeah.
And they like that feeling of getting a little buzz on. And one beer leads to another, and one beer party today, you have another beer party a couple weeks later, right through high school. And when you get out of high school, you aren't just doing beer. You're dropping a hit of acid, or you're trying a couple Oxycontin pills, or you're trying different things that you have no control over, whether they're actual pills that you believe that they are.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many deaths on the police department and so many drug-related deaths that it just became overwhelming. So I wrote the book, and the ending of the book, up to page 113, everything is true, but the ending of the book is not true. And that's where I get so disgusted with our government officials who could make a huge change if they decided they wanted to put some effort into it. We don't have to have our kids die of drug overdose in this country. We just have to educate them. And in Pennsylvania, they have a law, it's called 1547, requires schools from kindergarten through 12th grade to provide drug prevention training every year. Well, guess what? There's no teeth in the bill. And it means most schools don't do a darn thing about it. Or I've had young people tell me, we have about 15 minutes of discussion about drug abuse every year. That doesn't get the job done. And it's not being done by professionals. I'm the only person in the Western District of Pennsylvania to ever have the luxury of going to the DEA Drug Unit Commanders Academy in Quantico, Virginia. I was there with 43 other people from all over the world. I've gone to some of the best drug schools this country has to offer. I've been qualified in federal and state court 85 times as an expert in the field of drugs.
Wow.
That's why I developed this program. and it is exceptionally effective. All you got to do is go on my website. I have a binder with over 200 letters from students, principals, school resource officers, teachers, counselors, all saying the same thing. Wow, your program blew me away. And I've never heard of a program where a young lady will walk out to a deputy sheriff and hand them their marijuana pipes and their bag of marijuana after they go through my program. I've never heard of that happening other than my program.
Incredible.
And I just want to try and save kids from a lifetime of addiction. That's my whole thing.
And what you're doing is, it's cutting edge. Even though, drug and alcohol education in schools has been going on, for years, in some capacity, I'll put that in quotation marks.
Yes.
You're really taking it to levels where, and you're being real about it, where, we're not putting, the smoke and mirrors on it, if you will. This is what's going on. This is, again, every kid is vaping. Most of them are. Might as well start talking about it and dig in. We're out of time. I could just keep going. This is just amazing what you're doing. Joseph, can you tell everybody how we can find out more about your program?
If you go to my website, drugawarenessusa.com, you can go on there and you can see my bio, my expertise in the field of drugs. And in addition to that, you can go on and you can take a look. But the most important thing parents can do is go and demand that their schools indoctrinate and that they bring this program to their schools, because without it being in their schools, their kids are dangling out there and they have no idea what they're putting in their mouth.
Right.
And it's just overwhelming. One thing I have to share with you real quick.
Sure.
I went to the Erie School District. The superintendent tells me, we don't have any drug problem. Well, a week later, it just so happened that a young 14-year-old boy at Erie High School is walking around with $3,100 in one pocket and a baggie filled with fentanyl pills in the other pocket.
I have no words, Joseph. I really don't. I'm usually never at a loss of words, but just put a period at the end of that sentence, and there's the ignorance that's going on. And I got to believe that these administrators, they know what's going on. They just don't want to admit it, because it shows that they're maybe not doing their job in those schools. So let's just glom over it like there's nothing really bad going on. Thank you for what you're doing. drugawarenessusa.com to learn more about the program. No matter who you are, whether you have kids in school now or not, this is something that needs to be talked about and elevated. And certainly the book says a lot right there. Single-handed, Joseph Kress, Kress, available on Amazon. I know that we're going to get together again sometime very soon. There's so much more to talk about. I wish we could continue today, but Joseph, thank you so much for being here and really spreading the awareness of how bad the situation is in our schools. Honestly, I thought, with kids in high school, I had a handle on it. It's way worse than I thought after talking with you.
Well, unfortunately, you're absolutely right. It's overwhelming how damaging this is. And unless we help our kids stay off of this stuff, it's going to continue to grow and grow. And if 111,000 people last year died of drug overdose, it's not going to stop at that. The CDC estimates that the United States has 31.4 million people that use illegal drugs. That's 1/10 of our population.
The CDC also says that the segment of our population that has the highest consideration of taking their lives, which is approximately 50%, are teenage girls. So if they don't go in that direction, what's the other direction? They're probably going to gravitate towards some type of substance, some type to deal.
Absolutely.
To deal. We're here to get the word out. Thank you so much for being here, and looking forward next time we get together and dig deeper into this.
It was a real pleasure speaking with you and your audience, and I just pray that the people that are hearing this podcast go on my website and they demand their superintendents of schools to take my program and get it into schools so that it can help save kids from a lifetime of addiction.
We're dedicated to helping you get the word out, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Let's go inside the mind of a 10-year-old.
I should have worn those earrings today. I like those earrings. Gabby has those awesome earrings. I need to ask her where she got those, but that's just what she would want me to do. I'll have Michaela ask her for me.
Buckle up, Sarah.
Yeah, but then Michaela will be like, why don't you just ask her yourself? That's just like Michaela.
Sarah, buckle up.
Michaela's such a great name. I wish I was called Michaela. There's like a dozen Sarahs in my class.
Hey, we're not hitting the road until you buckle up, honey.
Oh yeah, seatbelt. I forget sometimes because my brain is like busy, you know? I wonder if there's pizza at school today.
Sometimes it can be tough to get through to your kids, but it's not impossible. Always make sure they're wearing their seatbelts, even on short drives. Remember, you have the keys, you have the power. Never give up until they buckle up. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council. Visit safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup for more information.